Thanks for tuning in to EC Plumbing's Tips and Tricks. Today we're going to show you how to install a faucet, a pop-up, and make sure everything is set properly. And we're going to start with basically our sink. Okay, so you have this sink. We like to build our sinks before we put them actually inside the cabinet. It makes it a little user-friendly, and we'll show you why it's easy to work with. That's why they call them drop-ins. You can build it, set it in. You know, obviously if you are doing your installs yourself, you cut your hole for your cabinet. Some of these boxes come with templates, some don't. You just make sure your sink fits before you mount everything up. There's multiple ways that you can build this thing. You can put the faucet on first, you can put your pop-up in first, you can do whatever, really whatever you want. I think we're gonna start with our pop-up today and go from there. So first thing you do is make sure you got a good clean surface on your sink. You take your pop-up assembly out of the box. We've already pulled the packaging out. Pull everything out, and this is basically what you get. Now we like to put a little bit of Teflon tape and pipe dope right around here to get a good seal. Just a little bit. It actually comes with a little ferrule in it to help seal it, but we like to do that to put the seal in. So first you have to take all this off. Depends on where you get your product, but some of these tell you that if you get the plastic ones, they only want you to use silicone instead of plumber's putty. This one we're gonna use plumber's putty, and we're gonna show you what a good seal looks like to make sure you get it. So this is plumber's putty right here. I've kind of already pulled it out of my little tub. You make it like a little hot dog. You warm it up in your hands. It's almost like if you were a kid, you ever played with silly putty, it kind of feels like that. And you just kind of roll it around and just pinch it off. You take your leftovers, throw it in your tub. Now what I do is I take my thumbs and work it all the way around the bottom of the flange of your assembly. So it's gonna look something like this. You can use a little more or a little less, but you gotta squish it to really get it to a good seal. So you'll slide this down, and what we do is we pull it up, and you actually can't see my hands, but we actually push down to kind of seat the little drain, and then it'll sit inside there nice and flush. So as you tighten up, as you put your gasket on, your slip washer, and then your nut on there, and that will tighten up together and create the seal. But what it's going to look like is it's already popped off there. So if you smash it in there, and then if we were to pull it out, you would see that it creates like a nice bevel to the sink there, and that's what gives you your sealing surface. So actually, because I've already done that once, I can just kind of squish this out again because I put a lot on there, and I'll actually make another one. So what we do is we turn this over, kind of hold this in our hand. This is where it fights you a little bit because of the rubber washer. But you slide that on. Just like that. I actually take a little bit of pipe dope, pipe sealant, and just put a couple little flicks on this when we actually install this for real. That way, in the future, if you ever decide to change this, you can still get it off. It helps. So if this thing starts to be kind of a bear to you, you got to be careful about kind of messing up your threads a little bit. But sometimes you got to use a little bit of extra support. So once you get your threads on, don't try to ruin your threads because eventually you have to get it back off. So once you get this tight, don't forget that you have to make sure that you angle your pop-up section for your rod, angle it back towards where your faucet's gonna go, because that's where you need to hook up all your little connectors and stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our little cutters, our PEX cutters that we have, just cut the tape. Cut the tape off, get everything ready to rock. Pull your little retaining clip off. This is the actual pop-up assembly, and this rod is gonna sit, this rod will actually sit inside there and connect to this, and that's what actually makes it move up and down. So you take this off. Some of these have little like ferrules inside them to create sealing surfaces. Some of them don't. You have to double check. We actually use our little piece there to make sure that it's sitting in there properly, which it does. Put that back in there like so. This will actually sit here like this. Take your pop-up assembly. This part faces the same direction, because if not, it won't really catch that once it sits. So you put this inside there. You look to make sure it's lined up. You'll actually kind of feel it pop into place, and you should be able to actuate your pop-up assembly. Okay, so now it's set. Won't fall out. Your pop-up right there won't fall out. Now it's set, so you can kind of mess with that and play with it. So, yeah, it sits there, push it up. You know it works. Then you go to set your faucet. So, when you go to set your faucet, we like to put just a little bit of putty, hot dog style, all the way around the holes. I think I threw my putty in there. So basically what it would look like is you kind of go all the way around, just like this, all the way across, tighten it down. So then you slide this onto your faucet. It kind of holds itself. Hot's on the left, sometimes they're labeled. You got to get that good and set right there. And what you'll see is when you get a good seal, it'll actually sit flush. If you over tighten it, it can suck it in or something like that. You'll have to readjust it to get it to sit properly. So then sometimes you got to bend these out a little bit too. What you'll do is you'll get that installed like that. You take your retaining nuts and your spacers and you install those next. So what we do is, it's kind of cumbersome. You gotta wish sometimes you have 3 hands, but what we do is we do this. You start it, put your spacer on, and your nut. So a little quick tip is I believe these are 3/8 nuts, and you can take a 3/8 socket with an extension, because sometimes you're putting these on underneath sinks and stuff like that. Even right here, you can use it to tighten the faucet down. It's a lot easier to do now than it is underneath the sink, but we use this instead of a crescent wrench or a pair of channel locks, something like that. So I just kind of spaced it out a little bit. Put your spacer on. Okay, and that's what it should look like. You know, you tighten these down a little bit so your faucet doesn't wiggle. See how you have the good seal all the way across, plus the plumber's putty that you put down will help give you more of a watertight seal. That actually seals this up quite a bit, because A customer complaint is, well, we have water, we have a drip underneath our sink or something like that. Well, sometimes it's because these have been installed and water can still get underneath that, and that putty stops that. So the way we check is we just splash around and look to see if it leaks. That's how we troubleshoot that. And then all we do is pull it off and put putty on it. So now that you have your faucet installed, it pretty much looks like this. You take your pop-up rod and you put it in the faucet. This is your little retaining ring. It'll go here. So what we do is we slide this on. You have to adjust it. See, you want it to come out a little bit, so that looks pretty close. Sometimes you gotta adjust it a couple times. It's not that big of a deal. But we're gonna go in that third hole. Slide that just like that. You come up here, you pull your rod up. This is your little set screw. Again, you could use anything you want, really. Channel locks, crescent wrench. This is close, so we're using these. So that's tight. Now, there you go. That's how you install a faucet into a drop-in lab. See that? It pops up, shuts down, just like it goes. You clean up the rest of your putty after you've tightened everything down. Hook up your water supply lines, pull your aerator off, run it for a few seconds, about 30 seconds, both hot and cold, and then run it in the middle, shut it off, put your aerator back on, double check for leaks, and you're good to go. Check your drainage, everything like that. And that is how you install a single handle MOEN faucet inside a sink.